This viewer's phone was horrendously repaired by his local repair shop. What was just meant to be a charge port replacement has turned into a complete disaster. Hi guys, welcome back to another Hugh Jeffries video. In this video, I'm going to be fixing a botched repair job on this Nokia 7 Plus. A gentleman by the name of Obit reached out because his Nokia 7 Plus was acting up after he'd taken it in for repair. After the new charging port was installed, he found his screen had been replaced and poorly installed. The volume button was jammed and the charging port seemed misaligned. I'm not a repair shop and I don't do repairs for other people, but as he was looking to sell the device, I offered to buy it. $100 later, I had a Nokia 7 Plus. But before we get started, I'd like to thank iFixit for sponsoring this video. For the month of February, tag your repairs with Fixit Feb for a chance to win a ProTech toolkit. Or why not get parts from iFixit's extensive store for your next Android repair at ifixit.com/HughJeffries or at the link below. He told me the location he got it repaired at, and while I won't be naming them, they are a shop located in Newcastle, New South Wales. I had a look on their website. It looks as poorly written as this phone was repaired. But highlighted in bold text is their only goal: client satisfaction. Does that mean a proper repair isn't a goal? Well, they do state their services are of high caliber. In fact, they claim to provide services to many 1,000+ Fortune companies. Does that mean they work on companies outside the top 1,000? I mean, who can't? That sentence makes no sense. Coming back to the phone, we can see their high caliber repair job. The display is misaligned with residual glue seeping out the sides, and it isn't actually properly adhered down. Upon testing the volume buttons, they function as described. It somehow is getting jammed and when pressed, is pushing the volume all the way up. Obit also mentioned a piece of plastic behind the display. Sure enough, he's right. This looks to be some kind of protective film that wasn't removed. Instead, the glue that's meant to be holding the screen in place at the top is actually just gripping to this piece of plastic. At the side, things don't get any better. The screen is lifted so much you can see the display's backlight seeping light out. While noticeable in the daylight, you can really see it best in the dark. But what about the charging port? The thing that was broken in the first place? Well, it works fine. There is some resistance plugging it in, but that's how it should work. The old port was likely so worn out there was little resistance, hence Obit's concern. Regardless, I'll inspect it later on. It's now time we get inside this phone, which won't be hard considering the display is barely attached. If you're doing something like this yourself, you'll likely need to heat up the display before prying it open with some plastic picks. But for us, I can simply slide the picks down the sides of the phone and separate the display from the frame. Obit told me the display was replaced as the technician, if you could call him that, cracked the glass when removing the screen. This was likely due to a lack of heat and the use of metal pry tools. You should always be able to create a small gap between the display and frame using a suction cup. If you can't, it's just not hot enough. With the display free, I can unfasten the one screw and bracket covering the display and battery connections. Both of these can be disconnected using a spudger. Afterwards, the display can be lifted up and away from the phone. While not an original panel, it is working, so I'll put it aside for later use. Further inspecting the phone, I'm not surprised to see a missing screw. At the top, the plastic film that was left behind is covering the camera, earpiece, and display adhesive. I'll proceed further into the phone by removing the midframe. It's secured with lots of Phillips screws, some of different length. Thankfully, Nokia has color-coded these screws, which will make reassembly a bit easier. With all the screws removed, the midframe can be pried free. With the full internals of this Nokia 7 Plus visible, we can uncover more shoddy repair work. The first of which is a loose grommet, left to float around on top of the motherboard. It is supposed to be attached onto the proximity sensor, but it wasn't. At the bottom, Obit was right. The charging port is misaligned, so I'll make an attempt to resurrect said issue. After unscrewing the charging port, I noticed that it too is missing a screw. It appears the wrong screw, one too long, has been installed and is slightly scraped into the surface of the PCB before the standoff has completely broken off. As such, even if I had a screw, I couldn't replace it. Despite this, the flex cable will stay in place without it. As for the alignment issue, there are two standoffs that the PCB sits on, so it can't be repositioned. Although after fastening it back, I seem to have corrected it. Another overlooked detail by the previous person was the microphone grommet. It helps direct sound into the microphone. While I don't have an exact replacement, I do however have a similar one from an iPhone 4. Although it'll need some slight modification to work, and that's where an X-Acto knife is going to come in handy. It's one of those tools I don't use all that often, but when I do, it's a saviour. This one comes from iFixit's extensive range of tools. It came with a load of replacement blades in all shapes and sizes. I'll use it to make an incision in the grommet, widening the gap. Our part will also need its head chopped off to fit inside the phone. Once that's done, the grommet can be glued onto the charging port using some liquid adhesive. The next issue to tackle is the volume up button. There appears to be a smaller gap between the bracket and button when you compare it to the volume down. In other words, the time it takes for the button to retract isn't quick enough. This causes the button to be pressed for too long. To resurrect this, I'll pry the bracket outwards slightly. The only way I believe someone could cause this is if they were prying in this area to remove the midframe. With those issues resurrected, the only thing left to do is properly attach the display. However, before doing so, we'll need to install the midframe and screw it down into place. Afterwards, the display can be attached to the phone so it can be tested. It's vital to test the full functionality of the phone before gluing it shut, as reopening it is time consuming and you risk damaging that display. Thankfully, all our repairs have been successful so far, so all that's left to do is attach the display panel. Let's hope I can do a better job than the previous repairer. I'll take the time to properly remove any residual adhesive left behind from the original and replacement displays. Whilst doing this, I noticed the repair shop had applied adhesive over the earpiece. Additionally, with the plastic film over it at the beginning, that means there's 2 layers blocking the sound. I wouldn't be surprised if you couldn't hear anything. With the adhesive removed, it's time we installed the gasket we found for the proximity sensor. Afterwards, it's time we applied some new adhesive to the display. After having removed any residual glue, I can apply tape adhesive to the top and bottom sections of the display. For the sides, the adhesive from a roll is just too thick, so I'll have to resort to using liquid adhesive. I'll apply this after connecting both the display and battery back into place. After wiping down the back of the display with a microfiber cloth, I can remove all the plastic protective film from our newly installed adhesive. I avoid using liquid adhesive where possible, as if incorrectly applied, the display won't stick properly, like what we saw at the beginning of the video. For best success, it needs a generous amount applied and for the display to be held in place until that glue cures. With all that adhesive applied, it's time for the front display panel to be attached into the frame of the phone. After positioning it up, it can be firmly pressed down into position. To keep pressure on the display while the glue dries, I'll secure it with rubber bands. Failure to do so will cause the glue not to hold the display in. Letting the glue dry for a few hours, we can come back and check out the result. With the rubber bands removed, you can see some excess glue has seeped out the sides. This is normal as this type of glue is incredibly messy. However, it's easy to remove. Using friction, I can clean off the sides of the phone. While cleaning the mess off caused by my application of glue, I'm also cleaning off the previous job. It's mind-boggling they didn't even make an effort to clean it off. Turning our attention to the back, I'll wipe it down with some alcohol and a microfiber cloth. The same process will also occur for the front display panel. And with that, we're done. So this is it, the Nokia 7 Plus. What was once an example of a repair disaster has been resurrected back into the condition it should have been when it was returned to the customer. I haven't seen any Nokia phones in so many years, but I really like the copper and black color scheme. You always see gold or silver phones, but never copper. I think this color is totally underrated. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button and consider checking out the restoration playlist for more videos just like this one. And if you're looking for any used devices, be sure to check out my online store, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.